The slam of the front door echoed through the empty house, a hollow sound that instantly amplified the silence. "Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad," I yelled, knowing they were already pulling out of the driveway. My voice felt thin, swallowed by the cavernous rooms. "Have fun, Liam. No parties." Mom's voice was a muffled shout through the closing car window. Fun, right? Fun was exactly what I wasn't planning. While my parents were off on their anniversary weekend getaway, something about reconnecting in the Poconos, I was stuck home alone, 16 and trusted, or maybe just 16 and not worth the cost of a dog sitter. I wandered into the living room, the familiar layout already feeling foreign. Our house wasn't particularly old, maybe 30 years, but it had settling cracks and the kind of low hum that old houses get. The TV flickered to life at my command, a familiar distraction against the growing unease. I scrolled through the channels, landing on some garbage reality show, but even the screaming contestants couldn't fill the void. It started subtly, a low, almost imperceptible hum beneath the TV's noise. I muted the reality show. The hum remained. "Probably just the fridge," I muttered, heading toward the kitchen. But the fridge was its usual, relatively quiet self. The hum was still there, though now it seemed closer. It was like a radio picking up static, a faint electrical buzz that tickled the edge of my hearing. I walked back into the living room, trying to pinpoint the source. It seemed to be coming from the walls. Great, I thought. Faulty wiring. Just what I need. I told myself it was just my imagination, the silence playing tricks on my ears. I cranked up the TV, hoping to drown it out. But the static persisted, a constant, unwavering undercurrent to the noise. It burrowed into my skull, a tiny, insistent drill. As the sun began to set, casting long, skeletal shadows across the living room, the static grew louder. It wasn't just a hum anymore. It was a crackle, a hiss, like 1,000 tiny insects scratching inside the walls. I switched off the TV, unable to bear the combination of noise. The house was plunged into a deeper silence, broken only by the maddening static. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through contacts. Mom and Dad were out of the question. They'd just tell me to stop being dramatic and check the circuit breaker. I landed on Sarah, my best friend. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "You busy?" "Just about to head out," Sarah said. "Big party at Jake's." "Why?" "Oh, nothing," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just bored. Have fun." "You sure? You sound weird." "Yeah, just tired." I lied. "Have a good time." I hung up, the loneliness pressing in on me. I was alone, truly alone, with the static in the walls. I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, I started in the living room, pressing my ear against the walls. The static was loudest near the baseboards, almost vibrating against my cheek. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling for any loose panels or openings. Nothing. Moving into the hallway, I checked the walls there. The static seemed to be everywhere, a pervasive presence that filled the entire house. I started to feel a prickle of fear, a cold dread that settled in my stomach. This wasn't normal. This wasn't faulty wiring. I went to my room, hoping for some respite, but the static was there too, a constant reminder that I wasn't safe, that something was wrong. I sat on my bed, the flashlight shaking in my hand, and tried to think logically. Maybe it was the electrical grid, a power surge causing interference? But that didn't explain why it was only in the walls, and why it was getting louder. As darkness deepened, the static intensified. It was no longer just a sound. It felt like a pressure, a physical force pressing against me. I could feel it in my teeth, in the back of my eyes. Suddenly, a new sound joined the chorus of static, a scratching. It was faint at first, a delicate scraping sound, like fingernails on wood, came from inside the wall behind my bed. I froze, every muscle tense, listening intently. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the wall. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't anything natural. I scrambled off the bed, backing away from the wall. The scratching turned into a frantic tearing, the sound of wood splintering and cracking. I could feel the vibrations in the floorboards, in the air around me. I had to get out. I stumbled out of my room and into the hallway, the flashlight beam dancing wildly. The static was deafening now, a roaring cacophony that filled my head. The scratching was everywhere, coming from every wall, every corner of the house. As I reached the front door, I heard a loud crack from behind me. I turned to see a long fissure snaking across the living room wall, dust and debris raining down. The scratching was coming from inside the crack. I didn't hesitate. I threw open the front door and ran, sprinting across the lawn and into the street. I didn't stop running until I reached Sarah's house, my lungs burning, my heart pounding in my chest. The party at Jake's was in full swing, music blasting, people laughing and shouting. I saw Sarah standing on the porch, a confused look on her face. "Liam? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "The house?" I gasped, struggling to catch my breath. "Something's in the house. In the walls." Sarah frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Static," I said, my voice shaking. "Scratching. It's alive." Sarah exchanged a worried look with a few of her friends. "Okay, Liam, you're freaking me out. Maybe you should sit down." They led me inside, but the noise of the party did nothing to calm me. I could still hear the static, a faint echo in my ears, a constant reminder of what I had left behind. I tried to explain, to tell them what I had heard and felt, but my words came out jumbled and incoherent. They looked at me with pitying eyes, convinced I was just stressed and overtired. Hours passed. The party raged on, but I remained on the edge of it, unable to shake the feeling of dread. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a call from my parents, hoping they would come home and tell me it was all a bad dream. Finally, around 2 a.m., the party started to wind down. Sarah offered to let me stay the night, but I couldn't bear the thought of being away from my house, even if it was haunted. "I have to go back," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Maybe you should wait until morning." "I have to know," I said. "I have to know what's happening." Sarah drove me home, pulling up to the curb in front of my house. The house was dark and silent, but I could still feel the static, a low thrum in the air. "I'll wait here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Just be careful." I nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. As I walked up the driveway, I could hear the static growing louder, the scratching more insistent. The front door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning me inside. I pushed the door open and stepped into the house. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The static was deafening, a roaring wave of noise that crashed over me. The scratching was everywhere, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The living room was a mess, furniture overturned, pictures torn from the walls. The crack in the wall was wider now, a gaping maw that seemed to breathe with the static. I moved through the house, each step sending shivers down my spine. The scratching followed me, growing louder, closer. I could feel something watching me, something malevolent and unseen. As I reached the hallway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A hand. It was pale and skeletal, with long, sharp fingernails, and it was reaching out from the wall. I screamed, dropping the flashlight and stumbling back. The hand retracted, disappearing back into the wall. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, bolting out of the house and back to Sarah's car. "Drive!" I screamed, throwing myself into the passenger seat. "Drive! Drive! Drive!" Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She slammed the car into gear and sped away, leaving my house behind. We drove to the police station, where I tried to explain what had happened. The officers looked at me with skepticism, but they agreed to investigate. They went to my house, but they found nothing. No cracks in the walls, no strange noises, no skeletal hands. The house was perfectly normal, perfectly silent. They told me I was probably just imagining things, that I was stressed and overtired. They suggested I see a therapist. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard. I knew that something was in the walls, something malevolent and terrifying. My parents came home the next day, relieved that I was fine. I didn't tell them everything, just that I had been hearing strange noises and felt uneasy. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination and promised to have the house checked for any wiring issues. But I knew it wasn't the wiring. I still live in that house. The static is gone, the scratching has stopped. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I can still feel it. A faint pressure in the air, a prickling on my skin. And I know that it's still there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to return. Waiting for me to be alone again.